I confronted my friend about her brother's behavior, only to be accused of racism and told, as a black woman, no one cares. WTF. I had been friends with my childhood companion for over 10 years, starting around the 3rd grade, give or take. She is Caucasian, 22. Let's refer to her as M, while I am African American, 22, and we both grew up in a predominantly white town. She attended a conservative Christian college, and I enrolled in a private liberal arts university. She invited me on a cruise that she would finance, provided I took care of the flight expenses and any excursions I desired. The group consisted of her, me, her brother, whom we will call J, 26, a former soldier, 2 traumatic brain injuries and an alcoholic, and their younger sister, 17, whom we will refer to as A. I met them in Europe a day after their arrival. M and I shared a room, while J and A occupied another. Around 3 a.m., A knocked on our door to wake us up. I answered and inquired about the issue at hand. She informed me that J had returned to their room intoxicated after being out for most of the night and had urinated on her bed while she was still in it. A left their room and spent the rest of the night with us. A and M called their parents to update them on the situation as it unfolded. Being a guest, I suggested they inform me if they needed anything, as it wasn't my family involved, so I felt uncomfortable providing my opinion. Fast forward to the cruise, M expressed her disappointment in J, but hesitated to tell him he couldn't drink, since she and I would be consuming alcohol as well. All 4 of us were in one cabin. J and I were assigned to separate twin beds, while M slept on the pull-out sofa. The first several days were quite pleasant, and we enjoyed ourselves immensely. On the 3rd day, J went to the casino and returned around 1 a.m., slightly tipsy, which they found amusing, so I chose to stay indifferent. If they weren't worried about his behavior, I felt I didn't need to be, especially since I was a guest. No matter how well you know someone, family obligations can take precedence. As an only child, I have come to understand that point. On the 4th day, it was Mtik's birthday. We had a great time watching a movie on the pool deck in the evening. Upon our return, A told us that J had gone to the casino once again. M was unconcerned due to their ability to manage themselves the previous night, so she believed everything would be all right. I felt uneasy but chose to keep it to myself. Around 2 a.m., after the casino closed, Jay staggered back into the cabin and woke us up. He entered the bathroom and urinated with the door open. Remember, we were on a cruise. After leaving the bathroom, he stumbled toward his bed, which required him to pass by mine. Lying there, fully aware of the situation, I hoped he would just lie down without further incident. However, I felt him pull on my sheets and call A's name, which immediately reminded me of what he had done to her before we had boarded the ship. I jumped up and ordered him to step back. In my sudden movement, he fell to the floor, exposing himself. I caught sight of his genitals in the process. I yelled at him to return to his bed and that we would handle everything in the morning. It's important to note that this was an entirely white family, and I was the only person of color present. He stumbled back to his bed as I moved to the opposite side of the room, not wanting to remain there, feeling anxious for my safety. I retrieved my phone to document any interactions, but accidentally triggered the flash. I take full responsibility for that mistake. I learned from experience that recording interactions helps to substantiate the truth, as he had been mumbling in his sleep. When the flash went off, it startled him, and he shot up from his bed. I quickly turned it off and apologized. He replied, "I'm glad you spoke up. I was ready to kill you." That statement made me tremble, but I resumed recording. A defended me, insisting that he should just go to sleep and avoid making such threats. M went to the bathroom and then laid back down as if this was all routine. J lashed out at A, calling her a terrible person and a poor sister for speaking to him in that manner. Eventually, J settled back down to sleep. I asked if I would be comfortable sleeping in the bed next to him, and I replied that I would find a way to deal with it, as it was not her responsibility. Again, M peacefully returned to slumber. I decided to rest on a pool chair outside and secured my own room at no additional cost the following day. I am grateful to the cruise staff for noticing how miserable I was, even when I only mentioned my lack of sleep in the other room. The next day, I recounted my experience to M, and since they were still half asleep. I expressed her sympathy and regret for what had transpired, while M looked at me as if I were exaggerating and indicated it wasn't a significant matter, although she claimed to believe me. The following day, while on a walking tour, J asked if I was still angry with him. I told him that it wasn't about that, and that we would discuss it later. J and I had a one-on-one conversation on the boat in a public area, during which I detailed the events to him. I apologized for triggering his post-traumatic stress disorder, but explained, "As a Black woman, I feel the need to record events for my own safety." I told him about the moment he approached my bed, calling out his little sister's name, and mentioned how I had seen him expose himself when he fell after I jumped up. He apologized and stated that I had misinterpreted his actions and insisted he was not racist, claiming that he never meant to imply he was ready to harm me. I attempted to clarify that was not my assertion, but my words appeared not to reach him. I concluded by thanking him for hearing me out, but expressed that I no longer felt comfortable around him, suggesting he continue his behavior, as I had already taken the necessary steps for my own well-being. Afterward, I received a text from M expressing her desire to speak with me. Given that M and I were on decent terms at that moment, I was uncertain about the subject of our conversation. We met on the upper deck, and she declared, "So you accused my entire family of being racist and incestuous." Those were the first words out of her mouth, and I was taken aback. I clarified that I never said that, asserting it was what he had told her, and requested the opportunity to explain what I actually conveyed to him. I provided her with a summarized version of my discussion with Jay. She expressed disbelief that, after I was given a complimentary cruise, I would treat her family in such a manner. I countered by asking if this was a gift, why she felt the need to bring it up as a point of contention, and even asked if she wanted me to reimburse her. She denied saying that and took offense that I would suggest such a thing, then went on a tirade about how all she heard was me asserting that, as a Black woman, I spoke about my experiences. She replied mockingly, as a Black woman, no one cares." I communicate with my hands, attempting to inquire about her comments because, after all, we had been friends for many years. She accused me of wanting to fight and physically harm her, which is why I was relieved we were having this conversation in public rather than in my private room. When she made that accusation, I was taken aback, and she continued. A month earlier, we had both been bridesmaids in a mutual friend's wedding, and I had mentioned feeling like the only person of color there. I was one of 6 people of color at a wedding of 50 attendees. M invoked that memory, claiming that I discussed race too often and that it was irrelevant, indicating that it made no sense to continually bring it up. I assumed that if someone was my friend, I could candidly express my experiences without fear of judgment. Clearly, I was mistaken. After she directed those comments and others my way, I began to cry. She walked away, stating that we weren't having a constructive conversation and that Jay was uncomfortable around me now. I returned to my room, weeping, and called my best friend, ultimately making arrangements for my own hotel room and transportation after we disembarked. Once we departed the boat and arrived at our final destination, I informed them that I had secured my own accommodations and wished them well, indicating that I wouldn't be seeing them again. Later that day, M sent me an irate message expressing her disbelief that I would make such a decision and how I had ruined her vacation. I texted their mother a farewell message, expressing that I would miss her and that I was grateful for everything they had done for me. Afterward, M sent me another message denouncing my decision to say that to her mother, stating that she had expected us to resolve the matter like adults. I have not spoken to her since then, and this is a paraphrased version of her final text to me. So Reddit, that summarizes the entire situation. What are your thoughts? Edit: I have added paragraph breaks for better readability, so I appreciate your understanding. Additionally, I am in therapy to help me cope with losing a friend. Story 2. I faced the 2007 collapse, losing my job, home, and savings. Now, seeing job cuts from AI while food prices soar feels terrifying. Artificial intelligence is already responsible for various layers of harm, primarily because it is being employed to justify workforce reductions. Simultaneously, it serves as a protective shield for corporations, preventing their stock values from declining. However, in reality, companies are not genuinely utilizing artificial intelligence. They are merely transitioning to unprecedented levels of foreign outsourcing. The highest tiers of government worsen this situation by supporting initiatives that enable firms to substitute American workers with cheaper labor, effectively turning them into captives subject to frequent exploitation. These workers are unable to leave and will never earn prevailing market wages. This issue is compounded by organizations such as OpenAI, which do not aim to create tools to enhance existing employees, but are rather focused on developing systems designed to replace them. To clarify, I have a heightened awareness regarding economic downturns because I lost everything during the financial crisis of 2007. In just 9 months, over a decade of my life evaporated. I went from enjoying a stable job to losing my home, retirement savings, and life savings, culminating in a bankruptcy that severely impacted my career. It took years to recover, and only in the last few years have I begun to feel that I might achieve some semblance of retirement again. However, I am anxious because I recognize the warning signs indicative of the previous recession. Currently, I observe these same alarming signals emerging in my community. Once thriving restaurants are frequently sharing images of vacant dining areas after having just experienced normal business a month prior. Food banks are depleting their stock, shelters and soup kitchens are overwhelmed, and individuals who have exhausted their unemployment benefits still struggle to secure even the most basic employment. Meanwhile, companies report remarkable profits, yet they continue to lay off workers. The seemingly innocuous accumulation of items around checkout areas proved most revealing during the previous downturn. It appears harmless until you witness someone calculating their totals as items are scanned, only to conclude that they cannot afford everything. As a result, they start removing items from their carts and placing them aside at the counter. I am observing this phenomenon again in my neighborhood store over the past month. This economic downturn may not drastically impact housing, yet it seems we are on the brink of seeing job shortages and food scarcity this time. Many of these jobs are unlikely to return permanently. The availability of inexpensive capital has diminished, and little is being done to safeguard workers as their roles are transferred to locations like Hyderabad and Sao Paulo. Automation continues to encroach upon even the most fundamental entry-level positions. We are witnessing the replacement of many basic jobs with automation and various forms of artificial intelligence. 3 local fast food restaurants have fully integrated artificial intelligence into their drive-through services. One McDonald's has completely transformed its dining space by substituting kiosks and automated windows, where food is dispensed without any human interaction. Yum Brands and McDonald's are both constructing new establishments that feature entirely automated order production. Consequently, restaurants that once employed dozens of individuals may now operate with just 1 or 2 staff members. Thus, skilled positions are being eliminated, while unskilled roles are simultaneously being undercut. Highly qualified workers find themselves unemployed for over a year. Low-skilled jobs are dwindling, and wages have fallen to such a low level that even those fortunate enough to find work are still facing homelessness. Individuals cannot even rely on gig work platforms like DoorDash due to overwhelming competition, resulting in waitlists for potential drivers. Do not get me started on advancements in humanoid robots coupled with progress in artificial intelligence. I could write an entire post addressing how this trend will further undermine the middle class, and implementations are already underway in places like BMW here in the United States. Imagine a scenario in which infinite physical labor is executed by autonomous robots, trained virtually to tackle the challenges of physical labor and leased to businesses to substitute human workers. The bird flu initially affected egg production, but the culling of affected poultry will eventually impact meat production, thereby creating a cycle of issues for both eggs and meat. Cross-species infections are starting to affect beef and pork as well, particularly among both beef cattle and dairy cows. Infected dairy cows produce a substance resembling yellow sludge instead of actual milk, displaying minimal symptoms, resulting in undetected infections until they are connected to milking equipment. Current strains exhibit such high contagiousness that any cow sharing the same machinery as an infected animal also becomes infected. Cattle seem unable to build immunity and experience persistent reinfections. Human crossover infections primarily occur on dairy farms rather than poultry operations. Additionally, pet cats are starting to contract bird flu through their food sources. Small and medium-sized farms are destined for bankruptcy, subsequently absorbed by large agricultural enterprises, leading to even less market competition as major financial entities such as Vanguard and BlackRock enter these industries. Across the nation, soaring prices, elevated wages, and increased operational costs have forced numerous American farms to close down. In the last 5 years alone, more than 140,000 American farms have ceased operations. Dating back to 1950, 66% of all U.S. farms, approximately 3.75 million, have stopped producing goods. The area cultivated has diminished by 323 million acres, equivalent to around twice the size of Texas. Just like during the pandemic, once prices rise, they are unlikely to decrease. This exacerbates the issue of shrinkflation. Envision a scenario where jobs or living wage positions are non-existent due to unattainable housing, and homelessness is criminalized. Basic food items will become either unavailable or excessively priced. The government continues to cut funding for programs intended to assist those in need of food. Local farms are acquired, leaving no nearby sources of sustenance. Grocery stores and supply chains consolidate, monopolizing both available products and the prices imposed on them. Wealthy individuals maintain unprecedented influence over our lives. Eventually, the speculative artificial intelligence bubble may implode due to a groundbreaking technology that begins displacing jobs at remarkably low costs, or the markets may collapse from inflated profits following the introduction of a legitimate competitor offering significantly reduced prices, or possibly both scenarios. The fallout from this precarious situation would reverberate for generations. I am uncertain about how to advise my children.